I talked about guys on the bubble. So let's talk about bubble players going into camp. Now, obviously, we've got guys that are going to be on the bubble heading into camp. They've got a chance to change the narrative. So you go into camp, a bubble guy, you come out of the camp situation in the preseason, a guy on the roster. There are guys that are hoping to do that. Let's run through the positions quickly, talk about some bubble guys. So I don't think there are any bubble guys at the quarterback position. So all three of those guys are going to make this football team, barring health. All of those guys, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Taylor Heineke, Kyle Allen, all three of those guys are on the football team. I don't think that's going to change. I think we can all agree on that. Running back position, I do think there is a running back quandary there. I think there is a decision to make. I think that Jarrett Patterson is going to make it tough on the coaching staff. I still think Peyton Barber is Ron Rivera's guy. And unless Jarrett Patterson comes in and wows them, knocks their socks off, or they decide, hey, he's so good, we still love Barber, that we're going to keep 4. I think the assumption is they're still going to keep 3. That is a situation where both Barber and Patterson are on the bubble, because I think it's 2 guys vying for 1 spot. So I think that is an interesting dilemma there. I didn't bring it up on Nati's show, but I probably should have. But no way, shape, or form is that not something to keep an eye on, that running back position. So I think those are 2 bubble guys there. But more specifically, Jarrett Patterson is the guy on the outside trying to get in. I think Barber is looking to defend his turf as the 3rd running back on this roster. And remember, you got to play all special teams as that 3rd back. Barber does that. Can Jarrett Patterson say the same? We'll see. Y'all have to take that stuff into consideration. A lot of y'all just want to talk about Patterson's ability with the ball in his hands, and that's cool. But that 3rd running back better be able to play some damn good special teams. We know Barber can do that. Can Patterson say the same? Also, you go to receiver. We know that's the one we've been talking about the most. Okay, that's the positional battle, and the bubble spots that we've been talking about the most, because it's a glamorous position. We've been talking about essentially, 1 spot, 3 guys, maybe 4 for 1 spot. I told you don't discount Steven Sims Jr., even though I know a lot of you want to write him off, and rightfully so. Don't discount DeAndre Carter, even Isaiah Wright, because he's supposed to be a core special teamer as well. But we all think it's going to come down, if you subscribe to my theory, and not everybody does, of 4 locks and a half, because Cam Sims is as close to a lock without being a lock as you can get, and assuming they're going to keep 6, and Adam Humphries is a lock. I think he is. Some of you think he's not. That's fine. We can agree to disagree there. Assuming all of those things, it's AGG, it's Harmon, and if you want to sprinkle in some of those other guys, DeAndre Carter, Isaiah Wright, Steven Sims Jr., Dax Milne, if you want to sprinkle those guys and knock yourself out. But I think most of us think it's down to those 2 guys. I wouldn't discount DeAndre Carter or Isaiah Wright. Those are the 2 guys that I think have an outside shot. I think Steven Sims Jr. may have pissed away his opportunity last year, but I won't discredit him and say he doesn't have a 0% chance of making his roster, or has a 0% chance of making this roster, because I do think he still may get a chance. But that's, AGG, Harmon, and all the rest of those receivers, to me, are all on the bubble. All of them. The other 5 are not. So you go to the tight end position, and honestly, I think that's one of the most quiet positions on the team, other than Sammy Reyes and shucks. What's that guy's name from Texas A&M? He's got 2 last names. Yikes. His name will come to me, but he's definitely the guy that I think is the leader in the clubhouse to be the 3rd tight end on this team. And Sammy Reyes, I think, is a guy that I just don't think he'll be able to catch up to the learning curve fast enough to make an impact Seals Jones. Thank you guys. Red Wing 01, Condoleezza Perry. Thank you guys. Ricky Seals Jones. Really appreciate that. I really think that he's going to make the team, but Ricky Seals Jones is a bubble guy. Tamarick Hemingway is still around. He's a bubble guy. And of course, Samis Reyes, all bubble guys. So those are bubble guys at the tight end position. Offensive line, I don't really think there are too many guys that you look at and say, do they have a chance to make this team? I think they're going to keep a bunch of guys on the offensive line like they did last year. I think they kept 10 offensive linemen last year, which is a huge number. Normally that number is somewhere around 8 or 9. I think they kept 10. I think they kept 6 tackles, I think. Not 6, excuse me. I think they kept 5 tackles last year. Let's see. Morgan Moses, Jaron Christian. They kept Sadiq Charles, who was a tackle last year. They kept Cornelius Lucas. They traded for what's the guy they traded with Vegas for? David Sharp. That's 5. They kept 5 tackles. Did I forget anybody? I don't think I forgot anybody. That's 5 tackles. We didn't think they were keeping all 5 last year. And then they kept, obviously the 2 Wes's, Wes Martin and Schweitzer, Brandon Sheriff, and I think they kept the 2 centers, Chase Rouillet and the other rookie last year, and Keith Ishmael. That was 10 last year. I think they might keep 10 again this year. Well, we'll see how they divvy it up. But the only guy I think, and again, Keith Ishmael is interesting. I think he may be the odd man out. He may be on the bubble this year because of how much depth they have at guard. All the tackles that they have. They added Samuel Cosme. Let's see. You got tackles in Cosme, Cornelius Lucas. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. You've got Charles Leno Jr. And you've got, I don't know if they still consider Sadiq Charles tackle. I think he's more of a guard myself. But David Sharp is still here. That's 4 guys. Let's just keep it at those guys being your 4 tackles. So Cosme, Leno, Lucas, Sharp, 4 tackles. I think that, and I may be missing somebody. I do that from time to time. You go to the guard position. That's where we're the most loaded. Sadiq Charles obviously offers you positional flex because I think he could play tackle as well, but I'm considering him a guard. So you got Sadiq Charles, Eric Flowers, Wes Schweitzer, Wes Martin is still around. Don't know. He's a bubble guy, is Wes Martin. Brandon Sheriff, obviously, that's 5 guards right there. So we'll stop right there. Anybody not in that group, you're on the bubble. But that's 5. And then Chase Rouillet. That's 10. I think that's the 10 guys that they keep. Now, I think where the bubble comes into play on the offensive line is Wes Martin versus Keith Ishmael. You want that last offensive lineman to have positional depth or a positional flex, rather. And I'm not sure if Wes Martin can play center or not. Keith Ishmael is the only other true center on the roster. If something were to happen to Schweitzer, you want the ability to say, all right, Keith, you're in there. Obviously, Wes Schweitzer has experience playing center in this league, but he's more of a guard. On game days, he would probably be your second center if something were to happen and they would have to play, offensive line musical chairs to kind of combat that and compensate for the loss. Like Chase Rouillet, to me, is the most important guy on the offensive line because he's probably the most irreplaceable. That said, I think Ishmael gets the nod over Wes Martin, but we'll see what happens. So I think those are 2 bubble guys, Wes Martin and Keith Ishmael on the offensive line. You go to the defensive side of the football. On the defensive line, I think that the Stanford edge rusher from last year, can't remember his name, but I always used to joke and say, hey, on 3rd down, I don't want that guy on the field. I want Chase Young and Montez Sweat on the field. But the Stanford edge rusher, I think he's in jeopardy with the addition of Shaka Toney and William Bradley King. So I think that's a guy that I think William Bradley King is a bubble guy. I think Shaka Toney's going to make this football team. So I think you do have William Bradley King. I think you do have the Stanford edge rusher from a season ago on the bubble. Casey Toohill. Thank you, Loser the Wizard fan and Red Wing 01. Casey Toohill is the name of that Stanford edge rusher. Those two for me, and I really think James Smith-Williams is safe. So I think those are your two bubble guys. I think two guys for one spot potentially, depending on how many they keep. If they keep in 5 edge rushers, then there's a spot for them. If they're only keeping 4, which is what I think they did last year, then you got 4 guys. You got your 2 starters, and then you have James Smith-Williams and Shaka Toney. So Shaka Toney would essentially be taking Ryan Kerrigan's spot on the roster, and then you keep it pushing. But I think if you consider last year, the Alabama edge rusher who signed with the Giants, Ryan Anderson, an edge rusher, which he kind of was, then that was 5 guys, and then you would have 2 guys competing for one spot. So both of those guys would then be bubble players. So I think you could easily make a case for William Bradley King and Casey Toohill being bubble players. I guess you could throw Shaka Toney in that discussion too. They may really love Casey Toohill more so than I do. I think Shaka Toney's making his football team personally, but we will see. You go to the linebacker position. Honestly, I don't really know if anybody's on the bubble there. I mean, we don't have enough depth for guys to really truly be on the bubble. I mean, there are other guys that are there, and I'd have to see them. And this could change. This conversation could change after watching a couple of preseason games and say, "Hey, this guy's pretty impressive. He's going to make it tough." But I think the 6 guys that are going to make this team, as somebody alluded to earlier, I think it's Jamin Davis, it's Cole Holcomb, it's John Bostic, it's Khaleke Hudson, it's Mayo, David Mayo, and it's Jarrett Norris. Like, those are your 6 Packers, which is crazy, but I think that's your 6 linebackers. So we'll see there. And then the secondary, things get really interesting. Are you keeping 4 or 5 safeties? What do you classify Bobby McCain as? A corner or a safety or just a DB? Are you considering the whole group just DBs and you're keeping 10 DBs? Are you considering them separate groups, corners and safeties? Are you keeping 5 corners and 4 safeties? Or I don't really know how they're going to go about that. Let's just separate them as 2 different entities. Let's go 5 corners, 4 safeties. If that is in fact the case, you get to the back end of the cornerback position. First of all, let's talk about the locks. William Jackson III, lock. You've got a lock in Kendall Fuller. You've got a lock in Juice. I think that's where the locks stop. Afterwards, you got a guy like Jimmy Moreland that I don't know if he's safe or not. But don't forget, they went out and got the corner from the Detroit Lions, brought him in to compete. They brought in Bobby McCain, if you consider him a nickel. So there are other guys. They got Danny Johnson back on the roster. They still have Greg Stroman competing. There's still guys on this football team at the cornerback position. So it'll be interesting. There are only 3 locks, 5 spots, presumably. I don't think Jimmy's a lock. They brought in guys to compete. I think all of those guys, minus the first 3, are all bubble guys because you don't know who's who. I think Jimmy's going to make the team, but we'll see. The safety position is interesting, but then it's not. Landon Collins, Cam Curl, it is interesting. I take that back because is it 4 or is it 5? Landon Collins, Cam Curl, lock. I shouldn't say Landon Collins is a lock. He's not guaranteed anything. I don't think he's getting cut, personally. I think he's making this football team. But nothing's guaranteed there. Cam Curl, let's just go with the definites. Cam Curl is making his football team. DeShazer Everett is making his football team. Outside of those guys, I can't guarantee you anything. I am a huge fan of Jeremy Reeves. I think he's going to make this football team, but he could be the odd man out when it's all said and done. I think it's Reeves. I think it's Shays. I think it's Cam. And I think it's Landon Collins. Those are your 4 safeties. If they decide to keep a 5th, I think it's going to be the rookie Derek Force. So Force is a bubble guy. I think Reeves is a bubble guy, even though I think he's going to make the football team. And I guess you throw Trap in the cornerback discussion. I guess it's hard to envision him making a football team. And then again, Bobby McCain, where does he fit in all of this? If you consider McCain a safety, are you keeping 5? If not, that's when you start to get into that discussion of, if you keep him 4 and you consider McCain a safety, that's when we get into the discussion of, all right, Jeremy Reeves was good. All right, Landon Collins was really good. So things get really interesting if they consider McCain a safety. If they consider him a corner. And again, it may not matter. They may say, we just counting DBs and we're keeping 10. Okay, then that doesn't matter. Safeties, corner, doesn't matter. They're keeping 10. He's in there. LouieTeeNetwork.